We are days away from the completion of 2021. It's time to get into my year-end reviews as far as the very best comic book stories, best comic book issues, worst comics, best comic book characters, and all that. We're going to start right here with the best comic book stories, in my opinion, for the entire year leading into 2022. And tomorrow, I'm going to have the 10 comic books I'm excited for that we know about right now in 2022. In this list, you are going to notice there aren't all that many DC comics, but I do want to say right up front, there are 3 DC stories going on right now that have not completed, one of which would likely be my number one comic story of the year, Superman 78. Robin and Batman has one more issue left. I don't believe it's going to complete this year. And then the Robin story with Lazarus Island, the Lazarus Tournament, that also is not completed. I have been burned too many times putting a story in here before it's finished, and then the end doesn't quite live up to what's been going on. So if the comic book story is not complete, I cannot include it in this list. So I hope you enjoy this. Let's get into it with number 10. Keegan Black. I would consider this the best comic book event from either the big two in 2021. This is Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman. Their swan song on Venom. They've been leading up to this essentially during their entire run. And the Keegan Black is the arrival of Null and his symbiote army. We've got the symbiote god essentially takes over Earth and cases it. It's some type of black matter goo, and we have Eddie Brock and the Avengers and all the street-level characters in New York all fighting back. There were a lot of tie-ins. I didn't read them all. I read the main story. I read Venom. I read a couple of the tie-ins, but I found it quite satisfying, especially the main book. The art from Ryan Stegman was very good. Of course, we got the big reveal. There's a new symbiote god, and then there's a new Venom kind of at the end. So I thought this one delivered on everything that they promised. That's the one thing I have an issue with all these events. A lot of times they promise things that they can't deliver on. Keegan Black delivered. I found it enjoyable from beginning to end. Number 9, Resonant, Volume 2 from Vault Comics. This is one of those undiscovered gems, is not read nearly enough. And this is essentially the end of the Resonant story. I don't believe we're going to get any more of this, but it's 10 issues. David Andrew and Skylar Partridge, who is the new artist on the series. This thing is fantastic. It's if you've ever seen Bird Box on Netflix and you came away underwhelmed, you're like, well, that was a good idea, but they didn't really execute it on it. You will like Resident. It is essentially that idea, but done really, really well in a comic book story. You will be absolutely rooting for Paxton and his family to survive. They've been kind of dispersed, and he's away on an island. He needs to get back to his children. One of them's, well, 2 of them are disabled. They need medications, whatnot. It's a fantastic story. If you're wanting to root for a family man, you will be rooting for Paxton by the end of Resident, volume number 2. Now let's go back to Marvel Comics. Way of X. I'm not counting the last special on this one because it didn't say Way of X on it. I know technically that's the end of the story, but it had a different title. So I'm just going with the Way of X miniseries from Cy Spurrier and Bob Quinn. I thought this thing was fantastic. I was very hesitant because I'm such an enormous Nightcrawler fan that they would be able to execute on some of these ideas and not ruin the character of Nightcrawler in the process. Now, they very well may do that, but they didn't do it with this story. We had a lot of really cool stuff with Legion and, of course, Onslaught returning to Krakoa and some explanations as to why all the mutants are acting so villainous in the Krakoan era of X-Men. So if you did not read Way of X, I think you're missing out. And we know that we are getting Legion of X, which should be the continuation of the team book that this thing set up in 2022 as well. Next up, we're going over to Image Comics, specifically an imprint called Mad Ghost. And it is Geiger from Jeff Johns, Gary Frank. Really a superstar creative pairing at DC Comics. I remember the last big story they did obviously was Doomsday Clock, which was an enormous success over at DC. How they let these guys take their wares over to Image Comics and start up their own imprint is beyond me. I was not completely enamored with Geiger after the first couple issues, but issue number 3, it absolutely finds its stride. By the end, you will be rooting for Joe Glow. There's a big mystery about his family. Are they dead? Are they alive? They're in a bunker. He's been protecting them for years. It's a fantastic story. It's very well illustrated. And Johns does a really great job of really making you care for the 2 kids that Joe somewhat adopts along the way that are trying to escape the Mad Prince or whatever he is from Vegas. So it ended up being a very good comic book. I expected it to be good because of the creative team. and it definitely has me excited for more Geiger in the future. Next up, we're going over to DC Comics. Another comic book I was not completely enamored with after the very first issue. I thought Batman the Imposter by Mattson Tomlin and Andrea Sorrentino, while very well executed as far as the art is beautiful and the writing is of extremely high quality, I didn't think it was so much the Batman for me. It is very gritty, a little too gritty even for Batman, in the fact that it was really, really sad. It was a more realistic take on the character. I don't agree with every creative choice that Mattson Tomlin took with Bruce Wayne and some of the supporting characters. But by the end, I had fully bought in. It was well executed. You aren't going to get very many comic books executed at this kind of a level as far as a pacing, paying off the big mysteries, and really setting up really powerful action and dramatic scenes. Impeccably well done by Andrea Sorrentino. So I was very, very impressed with Batman the Imposter. And I would say, just as a Batman story, this was the Batman story of the year. Next up, this comic book, and I'm not even just going to go with one story. I'll just say Hellions did the entire thing for the year. This was the best, ongoing at Marvel for a long time. This was the gem in the X-Men line that unfortunately not enough people were reading, but it feels a little bit like Suicide Squad with mutants, but I think it's unique enough, and Zeb Wells does a great enough job giving a voice to each and every character, making them feel important, and he does a fantastic job of actually getting some belly laughs, which doesn't happen to me, at least, in comic books all that often. And he was also able to expertly craft the minefield that was Ten of Swords leading into Hellfire Gala, which could have tanked any comic book, with just the overall concept of those two terrible events. Hellions actually survived it and actually thrived, in my opinion. The story was fantastic. I'm sad that it's over, but if you did not read Hellions, they're all going to be out in trade soon. I think you will enjoy it. Read it from beginning to end, and I think you will buy in to this team of misfit mutant heroes. Next up, we're going to an event that I wasn't very happy with, but there were definitely some gems in here. We've got Future State Swamp Thing. Ram V and Mike Perkins, obviously they are on the regular Swamp Thing title. I do not like that one nearly as much as I like this 2-issue Future State story. This was easily, and I mean it's not even close. There's some okay stuff in Future State, but Swamp Thing was a cut above the rest. In 2 issues, he tells a complete narrative about the end of Swamp Thing. Which Swamp Thing is it? I'm not really sure to this day, and it doesn't matter because it's executed at that well of a level. The art by Mike Perkins adds just this flavor, this tone that really accentuates the story that Ram V is telling about the importance of Swamp Thing to the Earth as we're getting to the end of days and possibly the end of life on all of Earth. I cannot sing the praises of Future State Swamp Thing enough. I did not like Future State, but I loved Future State Swamp Thing. Next up, some people might have thought this would be my number 1 book. Stray Dogs from Image Comics. It comes in at number 3. Was an unexpected surprise. People were singing the praises, and I saw the cover, and I saw some of the interior art, and I said, it looks like Lady and the Tramp or something like that. I don't think this is a comic book for adults. Little did I know, obviously I should have been tipped off by all the horror-themed covers, which is definitely an added perk to this series. If you want to go and collect Stray Dogs, the entire series, go out and get those amazing variants with all those homage covers to horror books. They are absolutely fantastic. Tony Fleeks, Tris Forstner, really, they bring your guard down, and then they hit you right in the stomach with this story. I was not expecting it. I was fully bought into the plight of these dogs, what was going to happen, the situation that they were in. There's one moment with the Dalmatian. If you read the story, you know what I'm talking about. I just had this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I just couldn't take it. Stray Dogs is fantastic. It's definitely it's going places. I think this story is over. There are going to be a couple of one-shots coming up. They might be coming up this week, actually. But do not let the art and the name fool you. It's trying to let your guard down so they could just hit you right in the face with all the feels that you want from a really, really good, tense comic book. Now we're getting into the top 2, and I love this next comic book. This one right here, Barbaric from Vault Comics, Michael Moriarty and Nathan Gooden. Michael Moriarty is one of those undiscovered gems. Everyone should be reading Michael Morrissey comics. Every time he does something at DC, it's almost always a one-shot. It's always very wonderfully done. Barbaric is one of the really crazy, fantastic ideas I don't think you could ever execute anywhere outside of comic books or maybe anime. It's about a barbarian, and he's got a possessed axe that gets drunk off the blood of like criminals and evildoers, and he's on a mission. He doesn't want to be on the mission. He is an unwilling participant to go out there and just throw down thunderous vengeance on bad people with this wisecracking a-hole axe that's always trying to tell him what to do and get him into trouble. Barbaric is absolutely hilarious. I know some people are going to take, there's like 2 panels in the first issue that do have some stupid political nonsense in them. If you just skip through that and let it escape your mind, you're going to enjoy one hell of a great comic story. It's 3 issues. It's absolutely worth your time and money. Michael Morrissey, Nathan Gooden bring the heat in Barbaric from Vault Comics in 2021. I know a lot of you must be wondering, Wes, where are you going? What could actually top Barbaric and Stray Dogs? Actually, it's a Marvel comic. I was surprised by this one. It was something I was interested in. I like Daniel Warren Johnson. I really do. I think he gets characters at a level that most modern comic book writers don't. When I'm talking about characters, I mean characters that we know and love. He does not ruin them. He accentuates them and raises the bar of them, and that's exactly what he did with Beta Ray Bill. This thing is fantastic. It's one of those comic books that I wish Marvel would do more often. It's not connected into anything. Well, I guess it was a tiny bit connected to King of Black, which it didn't need to be. But it's this old, wonderful story. You get to escape all the crap going on at Marvel, and you just get to read this great story. And not only does he highlight the wonderful character that is Beta Ray Bill, but the highlight really is Scourge, the world's greatest wingman. I had no idea. This thing is hilarious. It is also heart-wrenching. It is a wonderful character study of Beta Ray Bill and his existence within the Thor lore and the Marvel Comics universe. I say this maybe too often, but it is a love letter to Beta Ray Bill, wonderfully written and illustrated by the incomparable Daniel Warren Johnson. His art is not for everybody. I understand that. Me personally, I love his art, and I think his takes on the characters in the DC and Marvel universes are impeccable. His works on outside of Marvel and DC on the indie scene are equally as good. So Daniel Warren Johnson is a gem within the comic book industry, and if you haven't read Beta Ray Bill, go out and get the trade. You are going to thank me tomorrow. This is not just a video of all the things that I like. I want to hear from you guys too. Let me know in the comment section, did I miss a story that you love? Am I crazy for leaving Superman 78 out because it's not finished? Let me know what you loved in the comment section below. Let's have a conversation about the very best comic book stories in 2021. There were a lot of bad comics, but there were absolutely some wonderful stories to enjoy. Now, if you're looking for more great comic book stories, and you maybe you didn't find a great comic book last week, I did make this video with my good friend Drew from Comics Elite. I say go visit that if you're looking for some comic books from last week, and I think you'll be happy with the 9 comic books we recommend from last week's haul.